All right, here's the next test. A little bit of adjustments to the camera, a little bit of fine-tuning adjustments to the SoloCast microphone. Mainly just bumped the gain up a smidge more and the EQ low frequency down a smidge. As I'm talking here, it looks like I'm staying fairly in the yellow, occasionally bouncing off the red. I think we just about dialed in on that now. Just going to need to work on the tonality of it. Continuing on with a little bit more practice on the ASE A1 practice questions. Here we have question 2. An engine is overheating and has white smoke coming from the tailpipe. The cooling system is pressure tested and will not hold pressure. And the question's asking, what can this be caused by? And we have 4 choices. So again, your standard multiple choice type question. So we have a blown head gasket, a restricted piston oil nozzle, a stuck open thermostat, and incorrect PCV valve. So let's talk about this question before we jump into the answers. We know the engine's overheating based on information from the question, and we know it's white smoke. Okay, so let's talk about smoke, tailpipe smoke, specifically tailpipe smoke in an internal combustion gasoline-fueled engine. So white smoke is typically coolant or water. If it's mostly water that's in the engine cooling system and that coolant is getting into combustion, it's going to look more like steam or vapor, but it's still going to be white. But actual antifreeze coolant is going to be very white and have a lasting residual effect as it hopefully floats out of your shop and you're not breathing it. So then what about if we see blue smoke? Blue smoke is typically oil that's being burned. So not oil that's somehow gotten onto the exhaust. This is oil that's being burned in the cylinder during combustion, blue smoke. And then the other most common of the 3 would be what we call black smoke. And that's when we have too much fuel. We have incomplete combustion. So some of the fuel is being burnt, but some of it's just kind of being carbonized and it's being left in a partially burned state and it's going through the exhaust and coming out black. So let's look at our 4 choices again, and similar to what I showed you on question 1, let's eliminate some of them. So will B, a restricted piston nozzle, cause white smoke? Are we going to somehow get coolant or water being burned by a faulty restricted piston oil nozzle? If you're not aware of what that is, it's typically positioned where it sprays oil onto the bottom of the piston. Okay, so not on the top side, but on the bottom side of the piston, so inside the crankcase, and it's used to help cool the piston. And so that's why some manufacturers call it the piston cooling valve, or in this case for ASC, they're calling it a piston oil nozzle. Also on C, would this cause it? The thermostat's stuck open, meaning it's providing no restriction whatsoever to the coolant flow through from the radiator through the engine and returning back to the radiator. Is that going to cause white smoke, meaning some sort of antifreeze coolant water mixture to be burnt in the combustion cylinder? Let's look at D now, an incorrect PCV valve. PCV stands for positive crankcase ventilation. It's what draws those vapors off of the crankcase and reintroduces them back into combustion through the intake system. Okay, so that would be pulling in some very lightweight, possibly oil vapor. Okay, and remember what I told you, if we had an excess of oil being burned, what color that smoke would be. So let's pop over here to our next slide. Specifically, we're talking about white smoke coming out of the tailpipe. We know the cooling system will not hold pressure. So a blown head gasket could cause white smoke. Okay, also could cause coolant leakage. Restricted piston oil nozzle will not cause white smoke. Stuck open thermostat would not cause cooling system leakage. Incorrect PCV valve would also not cause cooling system leakage. And I might as well mention that same with answer B. It also would not cause cooling system leakage. Remember, the question states that there's two issues with this vehicle. Not only white smoke coming out of the tailpipe, but the cooling system will not hold pressure. So remember to take all the information you have from the question when you're bouncing it off of your possible answers. If you've never disassembled and removed a cylinder head from an engine, this is what the gasket looks like that's between the cylinder head and the engine block. And if you look right in here in this example, you can see where this would be a coolant passage, where coolant is flowing vertically alongside the cylinder wall and up into the cylinder head possibly. Okay, and you can see here where the gasket is all deteriorated and washed out. You can see some of it still flaking off here, where the gasket surface should look like what you're seeing in more of a darker color here. This is an obvious path of where coolant and compression are swapping places. All right, we'll end this portion of the test and see how this looks.